What if I went back and remade my first game? After spending 2 years learning how to become an indie game dev, I finally hit a wall where I realized the current project I'm working on may never be finished. Maybe the best idea is going back to the beginning, starting everything from scratch, and trying to see how much better I got at making games. We all start off over ambitious. We have tastes that determine what we think is valuable. Anything less than that is not good, it's not worth making, and frankly, it's not why you started making games in the first place. Our taste in games is what brings us here in the first place, but it's also the leading cause of why we end our projects. And this is a trap that almost every indie game dev that I've come across has fallen into. And this is where I found myself on my current project. As someone as hard-headed as me, finally starting to understand why so many people quit working on their dream games or their passion projects. When I started this channel, most of the games had restrictions. I would make the game in 1 month or 1 week to try and reach some arbitrary goal to learn more about game development. The project was going well at times, but if I'm being completely honest, it was nowhere near a playable state. The more decisions that I make about the game, the more complex it got. The color palette, the way the characters talked, the way the animations felt. It's not like the game wasn't moving along. It just kept adding more depth and complexity the more I tried to reach the finish line. We're not even talking about normal bloat like mechanics or too much art or too much content. Just trying really hard to make a good game requires so much detail and focus that you don't even see before you start. As a result of this, I restarted this project 3 to 4 different times. The art went through so many iterations. At first, it was going to be set in a swords and sorcery style world. Then it went to a noir, dark and gritty theme. Then I transitioned it to a cyberpunk-esque retro anime style. But something just didn't stick with any of them. I needed to change the project in a way that wasn't just an additional 5th time. It needed to be the final time. There comes a point where reducing your scope is pointless. Making it any smaller would just reduce the game to nothing. Either I was prepared to spend the next 3 years working on this game to try and have some type of success, or I had to figure out a whole new game idea. I decided I would start by being honest with myself. I was done with this project. Instead of going back and coming up with a new idea, what if I started from the first game that I ever made and made it into something better? Going back and transforming the concept into an actual game, using all of the lessons that I had previously learned and seeing if I can apply them to a much simpler concept. My first game was originally a maze game. The player would drop into an atmospheric maze and would have to find his way out. There were enemies that would wander around the maze that would randomly chase you if they saw you, but other than that, it was really just you in a maze. I barely knew how to do anything in game development at this point. By the end of it all I could manage was just a static maze, an enemy, and a screen that said you win. So first things first, let's just start with remaking the game from scratch. While remaking the game, I learned a few lessons. One thing I noticed when trying to learn how to make games from scratch is that it can be very difficult to get over the hurdle of math and programming and science. One way I've found to combat that is by the sponsor of today's video, Brilliant. Brilliant's growing collection of programming courses is a great way to build your timeless problem-solving skills. From learning Python to developing an intuition for computer logic, you'll get hands-on experience from real-world programs to learn and to think like a programmer. I've used Brilliant for quite a while now. If I have some free time on my phone, I can go through the problems in the courses, and it dramatically helps me reinforce those skills when I'm working on my own game or my own projects. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/gamecourier or scan the QR code on the screen. You can also click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Everything you need to be smarter, to work harder, to further your game dev career is there. No excuses. All right, guys, back to the video. First thing I did was created the maze walls. Next, I created an enemy actor that selected random locations to travel to every few seconds. Then I created a zone that the player can reach that ends the level. And done. Simple. Something that took me a week to make 2 years ago now took me about 30 minutes. A big part of being successful with these engines is learning how to use the out-of-the-box tools. The first time around, I tried to completely re-engineer my own character controller, but the character component that they start you off with honestly provides so much value that it almost makes no sense to use anything else unless you need a really specialized movement controller. Things like that is why I was able to develop this game way quicker than the first time around. Another thing that I learned is don't overcomplicate things. A lot of times when we design systems or we design actors and components for our games, or prefabs, whatever you use, I don't care. You tend to overscope or over design. I still kind of do that now, but I'm trying my best to cut down on it. For example, in this game, when I first was trying to design it, I wanted the maze to be modular so it can move around, and I just didn't end up using or needing any of that. At the end of the day, the wall is just a mesh with a texture on it, and it didn't need to be any more until I got to the point where it was time to add new mechanics or change things around. Probably the final tip as I work on the enemy AI for this game, one thing I realized in the original game was once the enemy found the player, it became very difficult to escape. The enemy knows the maze. You do not know the maze. I think my idea back then was the game needed some sort of challenge, and I made the enemies a lot smarter. It can be really frustrating when you put the player in a situation that is almost unwinnable without knowledge they would get from dying or losing. But these are the things that actually make it difficult to make a game. Learning what to leave alone, learning what to pursue and what not to pursue, really just helped me throw this game together in an afternoon. From there, it played a great part in building this fun game loop. Now, I never planned on keeping this the exact same. I wanted to turn it into a bigger, better game. But it all starts with the game loop and the original idea. Starting with a game loop already allowed me to build around it much easier. Your focus isn't about finding the fun. It's about adding to it. It's about subtracting from things that are too much and adding to things that need more. This time, I'm going to work from the core outwards. I'm going to call it the layer method. What I tend to do is guess the scope of my game. I would come up with the concept and say, well, I probably need 3 areas. I probably need 20 enemies, 30 weapons. But using this method, you would overplan and sometimes you would over-design all of these mechanics before you knew how it would actually play out. Using the layer method, I only add what I know the game can support one at a time. Maybe the game feels good with 5 weapons and maybe I need 6 areas as opposed to 30 weapons in 3 areas. Now I can add what I feel like adding without ruining the fun or making the game feel worse. After working on the game for about a week now, it's almost unrecognizable from the original concept. A lot of the things I thought were important didn't actually matter when it came to what made the game fun. The static maze is completely gone. Now, each maze is completely randomized. So now every run feels way more dynamic and unpredictable. What if those tight corridors and maze-like structures became more like rooms with individual puzzles? What if I shifted the perspective from first person to top down? Not just because it looked better, but because it fit the playstyle in the rooms more than it did the tight corridors. And as I started to play around with the mechanics, somewhere in the middle of that, the game started to feel different. It started to develop a new identity. It's still the same game loop at its core, navigating an environment to reach the end. Simple. But all the ideas around it now feel way more layered. And it's no longer just a remake. Now it's going to have elements of choice and challenge, more elements of randomness. A few mechanics that I've added to this game have completely changed the entire feel and made it into something completely unique that I personally have never played before. And I don't want to spoil that all in one video. Following this method, I've been able to rekindle my enjoyment of game dev and kind of get away from that development debt of feeling overwhelmed, working on one project and needing so much in return out of that project. I will be dropping another sequel to this development log, showing you guys all the changes that I made that make this game extremely unique and interesting. So I hope you're there. I hope you're able to follow. Consider subscribing. Thank you. We're just getting started. Appreciate you taking the time to watch me. Game Courier out. Peace.